Okay, good morning, everyone. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us today. We think we've got a pretty exciting few minutes here this morning as we talk about our brand new release of the Decision Lens platform, which came out a few weeks ago. We're glad to have you once again. Before I hop into any of the content or anything, just want to chat about few logistics. There's two of us here today chatting with you from Decision Lens. My name is Matt Ipri. I'm part of our marketing team here, and I'll introduce Sanjay Nayar in a few minutes from our product management team. And our goal today is to tell you all about all the great things that now make up the Decision Lens platform with a focus on the new things that were added as part of our spring release. Before I hop into the content, a few logistical pieces to answer the most common question we will get. We absolutely will share all of the slides with you after this call. We'll send you the recording of today's webcast as well as a deck of the slides for you to have and you to use and you to share with your colleagues. So we'll get that to you right away. If you have any questions, we absolutely want them. We will handle them all at the end of the phone call, but we're going to collect them via the chat screen. So to collect the questions, please seek out Maddie Scott, her name, she's the host of this morning's webcast, and send any questions you've got directly to Maddie via the chat screen. We'll collect them here, and then Sanjay and I will answer them all at the end of the webcast. The goal this morning time-wise is to get you out of here in about 45 minutes. So we'll probably have 30, 40 minutes of presentation and demonstration, and then hopefully 5 or 10 minutes to get through all your questions. And anything we can't answer, we will, of course, send to you when we're done and get out of here when we're done. All right, super. Well, let's hop into it. We really had it with our last release, which took place on April the 16th. It was quite possibly the biggest release in the history of Decision Lens. And that comes from a lot of different perspectives. And I'll hop into this in a few minutes. But it really changed a lot of different ways that you as our users and new people will interact with the software, the way the workflow pushes you through the software, the different analytics and options you've got available to you in the software. So there really are endless things that are now new and better and improved with the new release. But I want to take a quick step back from the release and talk first about the portfolio management process in general. If you've been on any of our last couple webcasts or you've seen any of our emails or you've been to our website recently, you've seen an image like this. And the reason I want to start here is because at the end of the day, this is what Decision Lens is focused on. The Decision Lens platform and all the work we do here is focused on your portfolio management process and making it easier, faster, and more intelligent. And what you see in front of you is a graphical representation of your process, of that process. No matter what different types of solutions you may use, software you might use, tools you may use, you are doing all these different steps with your portfolio. You are doing something to identify the options and the ideas that are going to go into your portfolio. You are doing something to build a framework for how you're going to analyze them and how you're going to select between them. You are doing something to actually analyze them and compare them and select between them and evaluate them. And then finally, you are doing something to track their success, to view their success, to view their data, all those pieces, and then bring that data and bring what you've done back into your selection process. Again, you're doing all these different steps. Whether you sort of know it or not, or you've modeled it like this or not, or you've drawn this picture or not, you're doing these steps. And it's our goal to make sure that your process, so the way you do these steps, maybe in slightly different order, slightly different overlap, or over different time, is make sure your version of this process is more intelligent and more efficient. So we're building features, we're building solutions, we're building all the different details that can hopefully make this process easier. We're building features that are making it easier to collect, to standardize, and to gather all the different ideas in your portfolio. We'll talk about that today. We've built lots of features, our bread and butter at times, of how you actually build the strategy and framework for selecting amongst your portfolio options. So we'll build that today. We'll talk about that today. We've built lots of features around how you analyze portfolio options. You've seen that a lot from us in the past, different scenarios, what-if planning, sensitivity analysis, all different things you've seen. And then finally, how do you measure success? How do you view your portfolio over time and watch how the value might change? So that's the big steps of the process. That's what we're working towards. The reason why I start with that again is because the new features that have come out as part of the spring release, as part of Spring 2015 release, in a lot of ways complete the feature set to make sure we can deliver all these different options. We've got new features around user simplicity. There are lots of new features around metrics and portfolio analysis. There's a new feature, new functionality called the idea engine, which we'll talk about, and we've enhanced the security around the solution even more. And so the reason I want to put that image up is that all the things we're going to talk about today further enhance this process, and we believe now really give you all the features and solutions you need to automate and improve every step of this process inside your environment. Now, whether you do them all with Decision Lens doesn't matter. You do them all with any other process doesn't matter. There are great features out there to sort of automate whichever step of the process you're excited about or is most pressing for you or most problematic for you. And so this release was truly transformational for the Decision Lens platform in that it delivered even more of the breadth of functionality that you'd be looking for. So with that as our backdrop, let's hop right into it. We're going to cover 4 big features today, and it aligns to those 4 bubbles there on the screen you saw in front of you. We're going to start with a brand new user experience. The way you will interact with Decision Lens has changed in a lot of really good ways. The ability to see data now is easier. The ability to see what you're looking for is better. The ability to find what you want to do right now is faster, is easier, it's more efficient. So the user experience has really gotten a whole lot better, and we want to share that with you. We want to show you what's cool about that. We want to talk about portfolio metrics, these new features around analyzing the portfolio in more detail, watching it over time, and really seeing how value changes with some of those quantitative features that go into it. We're going to talk about the idea engine, a brand new feature set that allows you to, in the same location where you analyze and select your portfolio options, to collect the ideas, work those ideas through an iterative process of making them complete, and then analyzing them against other ones that are already in there. So the idea engine is a powerful new set of tools to really complete your process. And then finally, we've added some nice security and user management features that I want to make sure we don't leave out. The way we'll make this work, I'll chat a bit about each feature, and then Sanjay will talk a whole lot more about what that feature actually looks like, what it does, and show it to you in action. So let's cruise through it. Let's start right away with the brand new user experience. The place it starts, the biggest new change, the first new change, is all about the home page. The home page now has replaced everything you've seen before with where you'll start. When you log into Decision Lens now, you've agreed with a brand new, beautiful, easily to read, easily broken up home page, which is focused on what you'll do with the solution. So Sanjay will walk through all the features, but it all comes down to making all the different types of users who may interact with Decision Lens easier to find what they need. We've introduced new ways, new things like tasks to find what's assigned to you, new ways to find your portfolios, easier navigation on the right and left and inside the portfolio models. So it's all about an easier to find, easier to use experience with a brand new homepage. So you'll see that from Sanjay in a second. Second thing you're going to see is all about new navigation. There's a new left-hand navigation which groups the biggest set of functions you'll need. Again, all the different user types, whether you're just in there to submit some new ideas, or you're in there to do some rating or voting of your portfolio, or you're in there as an owner or facilitator of a process. You'll find where all it is on the left-hand navigation, which starts on the home page, which you can see here in front of you, but then continues inside the application once you're inside a portfolio model. And so this left-hand navigation, as you'll see from Sanjay, replaces the tab structure we had along the top to now be easier to find, easier to use along the left-hand side of your screen. No longer forced to sort of hunt around for what you're looking for, forced to find things that might be buried in a different tab. It's all exposed, it's all easier, it's all faster. So with that being said, no need for me to dwell on anything anymore. Let me introduce Sanjay to take us through what it actually will look like.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm going to just show everybody an example of what Matt has been talking about. When I log into Decision Lens, I imagine most of you who logged in after the spring release will probably notice some major changes in the experience. And it's not just about aesthetics and making it look nicer and contrast of colors, but it is really about usability, discoverability, and making it easier for users who are familiar with Decision Lens and users who may not be familiar with Decision Lens to understand where they need to go, what they need to do. To just give you a quick tour of the home page, it's broken out into 3 different sections. We have a left pane, a right center panel, and the right panel. In the center is really where the tasks are. So if you have some active tasks that you've been requested to do, this is where they'll show up. So if you're asked to establish priorities, to do pairwise, to do ratings, we'll talk about the idea engine and submission a little bit later. But this is really where, for all users, the front and center, if I have things that have been asked to do, this is where they'll show up. We also have all the different portfolios that you have access to. We have search, so if you need to search for one, you can find it much easier. You can sort these. If the default sort is for you to have last access, so the ones that you use most often will be at the top. So it's much simpler for you to be able to access and use the ones that you use most. We also have on the right links to Decision Lens University, so that if you need to learn more about what Decision Lens is and get more information, that's right at your fingertips as well. And as Matt noticed, there are quick links if you wanted to dive. The overview page will have kind of a snapshot of all the different sections, but if you wanted to dive specifically into all of them, you can go into the portfolios page to see all the different portfolios that you have access to. You can always hit the logo to go back to the overview. The logo, and up here is another portion of the UI changes. There's a global navigation now that you'll see across Decision Lens, whether you're on the home page, whether you're in a portfolio, but also if you're in the other parts of the Decision Lens ecosystem. Those parts are areas such as Decision Lens University. So if you wanted to learn about some of the coursework, you can either search for courses or you can go right to Decision Lens University, and you can see all the great courses that we have, sign up for them. We've got web-based courses, we've got in-person courses, and you've got a consistent navigation to be able to get back to the home page if you want to get there. Similarly, for support, if you have a question, you're not sure how to do something, you can search from right here, and it'll take you directly into support. And again, you have the same navigation, so you know where you are and how to get back. Within a portfolio, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one. That you'll notice that the initial screen, we have a portfolio overview that is really your landing page for when you are entering into a portfolio. And it gives you some quick tips about where you might get started. Since we've got started, we really don't have anything in here. And not all the options are available to us, but we have some quick tips as to what you might be able to do in each of these sections. And we also have the left-hand nav to be able to dive into each of those. And it will make a little bit more sense when we show you a more populated portfolio, such as this one. And as you can see, as you do more, as you populate your criteria, as you populate rating scales, more and more capabilities will be exposed for you to be able to jump directly into other parts of the analytics and visualizations and optimizations that are now available to you, and you can jump to them quickly. And some of these things previously were capabilities that we had but may not be particularly obvious to you, so we've broken them out and you have much easier navigation to be able to get to these. Last bit to note is we have some icons up here so you can understand the state of the portfolio itself. The broadcasting, if you're doing a live broadcast to do a synchronous session to collect ratings or priorities. If you have the session open where you're asking people to do ratings or votes, this will tell you whether that is active or inactive, whether the icons are on or off, so you can know at your fingertips kind of what the state of that portfolio is. With that, I'll turn it back over to Matt for the next section.
Great, Sanjay. And I think one of the things to really focus on with the new user experience is all about making sure that different users find exactly what they're looking for at any time. So if you're asking different folks in your organization to simply come in and complete a task, there's no longer any confusion of what they're there to do. They'll have a task assigned to them with exactly what it's called, and it'll be easily for them to find right when they log in without any question. And that's really where these changes all stem from. My personal favorite is that portfolio overview page. I think that really makes it simple for anyone in the process, whether they are one of the owners, facilitators, or users, to find just what they're looking for and get right to the work they want to do without any kind of confusion or questions. So we're excited about their brand new user experience, and I hope you will be too when you give it a whirl. Okay, so with that, second thing we want to chat about today is all about the new feature called Portfolio Metrics. And just as you can imagine, when you use the word metrics to talk about anything, it comes down to data, to quantitative and objective data that allow you to do more analysis. And these are no different. The idea with portfolio metrics is to make it simple and make it easy to really collapse your analysis of your portfolio even more than ever before. If you did some analysis after you selected your projects in the past, maybe in Excel or other places, because you were trying to put your performance data in afterwards, you can now do that here. The big pieces around this that we're focused on are what performance data do we care about? Should this be part of our selection criteria? And how can I visualize this data more in my portfolio? And so we're excited to really talk about portfolio metrics. The first big piece, and you'll see this a bit from Sanjay, is that you can add these quantitative metric fields easier than ever before in your portfolio options, in the things that are in your portfolio as alternatives, as in things you're choosing between or selecting between. You can now preset these up in your alternative structure, and we call this really customizing alternative for completeness early on, and that way you know they're there. Anyone who's submitting a new idea, either via the idea engine, which you'll learn about later, or here inside the application, will be asked to add their metric and have a place to do it and an easy place to define it. So they're easy to create and a new place to do that. But the more important piece, obviously, is all the different places you can now use these. These metrics can now be added to all the different visualizations. The one in front of you here is the bubble chart, which can now look at these metrics over time. When you're comparing to different elements of your portfolio, you'll look at a specific category of options in your portfolio, but only against a certain metric. The bubble chart can do that. There are brand new visualizations, which Sanjay will show you, that are focused on these metrics over time by category in different breakdowns. And a key big feature of these is that they really allow your portfolio to be even more dynamic. As these portfolio metrics change, the value of some of your portfolio options may change. So if you learn as you made your selections and you get some new data a month in, a quarter in, a year in, you can now see, hey, did the value of that option in my portfolio now change? Should I be investing more in that option, less in that option? The metrics really are connected from beginning to end, so you know you're seeing the latest and the most relevant value of your portfolio items. And we've added new portfolio screens to new metric screens to your scenarios. So if you're doing some side-by-side scenario comparison, which is an important feature of Decision Lens, you now have the metric data available to you on that screen. You can see different breakdowns of it with averages, minimums, maximums, etc. And you'll see how those really are affecting different segments of your portfolio as well. How will this scenario compare not only to portfolio value, but now those key things you decide are key quantitative metrics or key quantitative pieces. So let's take a look at that in action as well.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So to talk about metrics, I think it's important to start with, as Matt said, the ability to customize the alternatives themselves and what information that we even want to capture. And that's really one of the most powerful pieces that's in this new release. And I'm going to go back to that new portfolio that we created that has absolutely nothing in it to show you where that lives. We have absolutely nothing in our alternatives, but what I can do now is I can customize my data structure to add new fields depending on what's important to me in the portfolio. Name and description are what's by default, which could capture just the name and description of alternative. But now we have all these different fields that we can choose to add, should we care to the portfolio. And if you hover over each of these, there'll be some descriptions about what these are. So if I wanted to add a new location, all I have to do is click that, say, give it a name. I have to add a description of it if I want to. And each one of these, I'm going to have a short answer. A short answer is one that's 160 characters or less, so this might be something we would use to capture the project manager's name. I can reorder these if I want to, so I can have these in whatever order I'd like. A long response would be something maybe I would use for a business justification. That would be a longer text response. I can pick a category if there is something that would be a drop-down of choices between a number of different options. I can do that, and I can create what are the options that I want to have, maintenance, etc. Hyperlink is another option as well. If I have a website or URL that I want to attach to my each alternative, and lastly is the metric, which Matt was referring to. You'll see that information came up that says when I do add a metric, it also could be added as a criteria, because now that I have this quantitative piece of information, I could also use that as a criteria if I wanted to base my my overall decision, my portfolio off of it. But I could use a metric, because this is any quantitative piece of information. So if it was square footage needed for a piece of facilities, that could be something that I'm capturing a number for. But another important aspect is that I can capture a number, but not just a single number. If I wanted my 5-year job creation projection for each of these projects, I can do that, and I can click the multi-period, and I can select what is the time period I'm interested in. Is it a 5-month projection? Is it by fiscal year? Is it by quarters? And I can choose what the time period is that I am collecting. So as you can see, I could drag multiple of these over here if I wanted to have multiple metrics or multiple categories, and I can really start to customize what it is that I want to capture and what it is that really defines the portfolio. So now when I'm adding in alternatives, all the fields that I've just created, you can see I now have individual options if I want to add it that way. There's different form factors depending on what the fields are. Or if I don't want to go through the whole form, I can either do a quick add to be able to add it just quickly to say I just want to add one. I don't want to have to populate the data yet. Or if I want to import the data, I can do it right from here, and I can import this from a flat file or from a spreadsheet as well. So that's how we would create these. And I'm going to jump back in. And as you can see, I've been using the navigation to get back into the home page. So it's easy to be able to use that. I can also use the home button down on the bottom here. This is also where I'd access settings to get back to the home page. But if I go into our sample portfolio that has data already in there, you can see what this might look like for a portfolio that has a lot of data in it. So we have all these different forms that have been created. If I don't want to see all those forms, I can clean this up for myself to say, these are my display options. Maybe I don't want to see the description because that doesn't, it's a lot of words that might show up on my screen. But if I do click any of these fields, I can get all the information about that that is going to be included in this right edit panel. So I can get a whole lot of information about each of these. The other real important factor that I can do now is I can add attachments as well. So if I wanted to add attachments to one of my alternatives, I can go ahead and add that in there. I'm going to upload it. You can add as many attachments as you want. There's some file size limits. And if I wanted to add a title, I could as well. If the title itself of the file is not self-explanatory, I can call it the project plan or whatever the case may be. There are a number of ways that I can also sort using the different fields. So if I'm interested in by innovation type or by region, I can sort all the alternatives that way. I can also do a multi-select. So if I'm looking at all the North America ones, I can multi-select that, and you can see that I could do an edit of each of these, or if I wanted to switch to the Latin American projects, you can see that now highlights those. If I wanted to PDF this, I could export these to a PDF, and you see I get a nice executive-ready PDF of here are all the different projects that are out there. So with the metrics, we have additional capabilities. So we have all these different metrics that are in this portfolio for number of jobs created, returns, so on and so forth. And just to kind of rewind ourselves a little bit, one of the releases we had back in the fall was with the resource allocation and some of the really powerful capabilities that we have to take the prioritizations and do a sequencing and allocation to make sure that we are optimizing our portfolio and getting the best bang for our buck, keeping within our resources. If you haven't used this, I welcome you to go into the DLU and then take some of our coursework. But what we're doing here is we're creating different scenarios of which projects are funded and which are not, and what is the timing of those projects. So now that we have these metrics that go with these alternatives, the timing and funding status of these, we now can see, well, what does that do to these metrics? The resource allocation is great for are we within our funding and are we maximizing our value, but the metrics that we added also might be extremely important for us. So we now have a way to look at these metrics in a way now that show us over time based on how my scenarios plan, what does that do for the metrics that are important to me. So for jobs created for this particular non-financial scenario, I can look and say, okay, based on the timing of these projects, what is the curve of how this plays out for my jobs created? It tells me how many total jobs, what's the average, what's the largest, what's the smallest, You can see the data down under, below here. If I want to break this out, I have the option to see this as an area chart or as a column chart. And I also have the option to break this out by alternative category that I created as well. So I have region or innovation type, and I can look at this by innovation type, either groups or stacks. So I can really kind of see, okay, which are the ones, most of the core improvement projects are really what's driving this in the late years. And I can also turn these on and off by clicking on the individual elements in the legend. So it really starts to give me a level of insight that I never had before on individual metrics, on whether it's market size or jobs created or whatever the case may be, to know what are the implications of my scenario decisions. The second place where the metrics come into play is in the bubble charts. So with the bubble charting, we have the ability to see our scenarios. Again, these are what was funded and what was not funded, and the default behavior for the bubble chart is to show cost and value based on the VROI index. But I might want to look at it something differently. So now, if I wanted to choose one of my metrics, I could pick either the x-axis or the y-axis or the bubble size and say, I want my bubble size to be jobs created. So now the size of the bubble is how many jobs will be created by this project. And I can look and say, wow, we've got some pretty big projects that are unfunded, that's the gray ones, that are creating a significant amount of jobs. So it gives me, again, another way that I can take those metrics that I've collected with my alternatives and use that as part of my analysis. The last way that the metrics are incorporated are within compare scenarios. So if you recall, we have some really useful ways to look at our scenarios and compare them. And when we are comparing these scenarios, let's just maximize this. We have all these different ways of looking at our scenarios that were here before in terms of how we looked at the sources of value and how the budgets were allocated. But there's a new field down at the bottom that tells us for a particular metric, and I can change and decide which metric I want to use, what is the overall contribution. So you can see that for jobs created, for my multi-year, multi-pool one, this is the total jobs. For the financial-based one, this is how many, and I can see, well, which one is giving me the highest for a particular metric. So you can see here in the financial-based scenario, I'm getting the highest rate of return. I'm getting the lowest for the non-financial, which makes sense, but now I can actually see those implications. And this is at the overall portfolio level, but if we wanted to drill down into the specifically which are the projects that are contributing to that, we can look at our what's in and what's out tab, and we can see for each scenario and for each alternative, what was the specific data point. So let's just go back to our jobs created, and we can look at, let's look at the ones that weren't funded across any of these projects or any of these scenarios. So these are the ones that weren't funded, and here's how many jobs created we may be leaving on the table. So again, it gives you another way to incorporate pieces of data that might be extremely important and be able to make the decision as part of the portfolio review process.
Super. Thank you, Sanjay. Before we hop off that, the piece of this that I love the most about metrics really comes down to the way this extra data allows you to really be thinking about your portfolio even more strategically as you go forward. One of the ways, one of the stories we've seen this in action already, we've got a number of customers in the pharmaceuticals industry, and one of the things they use to judge different product options that are on the table is a projection of how effective they believe this drug or product will be against its goal, against a disease or against a problem or whatever it is. And that judge of effectiveness is important. That efficacy is important. And so they make funding decisions with that as one of their criteria. And we saw recently that one product was given a limited amount of funding, had some belief in it, but they had a number of others that were far more important than that low level of funding. And so it only got, say, 25% of what it could have gotten in the future. After the second round of trials, the data that came in showed that it was 3 times as effective as they thought it was going to be, which was great news to everyone. But when you added that effectiveness on their criteria and they re-looked at their stacked set of product options, this product now was twice as valuable as one of the drugs that listed above it that was getting more funding. and they were able to, on the fly, add more funding to this product to make sure it was getting more testing, more marketing dollars, and more sort of manufacturing dollars to make sure it was potential at being even more effective for them. So their portfolio analysis wasn't a one-year thing in this case, or a once-a-cycle thing in this case. They added metrics to make it even more common and more effective. So metrics, I think, are great. I'm excited that we've added this new analysis to them. But to keep us moving, the next thing we want to chat about now is the idea engine. Very cool name for, I think, an even cool product, a cooler set of features. And what it comes down to is, most likely in your portfolio management process now, you collect ideas and options or alternatives for your portfolios in a lot of different ways. You most likely have a spreadsheet that collects them all in there. You probably collect certain options via email from different people. If you're in the ownership chair, you probably save all those emails in a folder or data enter them into a different spreadsheet that are on the table, and then you use that to then sort of key in your options into your alternative, your portfolio analysis, product, whether that's Decision Lens or a spreadsheet or anything else. What the idea engine is all about is combining that idea collection, option collection process into the same location, same software, same feature set, same data model as your portfolio analysis function, which is huge. It allows you to streamline. It allows you to ensure that all of your options are complete. It allows you to get more people involved in the idea collection than you did before, and allows you to do all this in a very automated, workflow-driven, easy way. And so some questions we'll look at in here. What does a good business case look like? How can I be sure all my business cases are complete? What data must be included? How will we categorize options? Who should submit ideas? The idea engine is all about empowering portfolio owners to collect their ideas, collect their options in the same place, and to be as complete and ready for portfolio selection, which is obviously the big goal. The big goal is still selecting the right options, building the highest value portfolio, but how you add this feature back into it. So Sanjay showed a lot of this already, but creating, being able to customize your alternatives to figure out exactly what I want them all to consist of. This is the first step in the idea engine. We won't dwell on this again, but how can you make sure that what anyone enters is complete? That all starts, again, with customizing alternatives to be exactly what you want them to be, no matter how they're entered into Decision Lens. But the new piece, that all comes down to the workflow around the idea engine. So you as portfolio owners, whoever's portfolio owners, can kick off different ways to collect submissions, to run campaigns to collect ideas. What do people think should make up our portfolio for this cycle, for this year, for this time period, whatever the case may be? And then have the easy workflow to ask for ideas, to submit initial ideas, to edit and ask for more detail on those ideas, to send them back for revision, to resubmit them, and eventually to approve them and add them into your portfolio management process, all in one location, all in one set of software. That's what's new. That's what's awesome. The place where it really all starts is the owner's ability to run new idea campaigns, to select exactly what they want to involve, to tell them exactly what they want to hear, to tell them when they want to hear it, to set the required data they want to have, to set the right workflow for them, and to make sure this campaign gets kicked off and your ideas are collected. That's what Sanjay will show you in a lot of places. But really what it all comes down to is once that these campaigns have been run, ideas have been collected, and they've been reviewed, and they've been judged as complete, they can then be accepted as alternatives and put directly into your portfolio management system, again, right there in the Decision Lens in the same place, so that now they can be moved into portfolio analysis. They're no longer just ideas, they're now alternatives, they're options in my overall portfolio to be funded, to be selected, or not to be. That's what it's all about. And the real key here, it's all in the same system. You're doing portfolio option collection and portfolio analysis and selection in the exact same place. So let's take a look at it.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. So we have all our alternatives for our populated example portfolio here. But the real question is, how did these get here? How did we come up with this list of all of our alternatives? And the reality is that you're not just hand jamming these in here. You have a list of projects. There might be new ones. There might be things that are changing, that are continuing. And rather than saying, well, I've got this list, but I know what they are, you may want to request, do this data request that says, well, we want to send this out to a population and ask them for submissions and ideas, saying these are things that I would like to have resources for. That's really what the idea engine is all about. So I'm going to jump back to the same blank one that we just created, and we created all of these different categories, and you can see this request submissions button up here. So if I didn't want to just add an alternative, and I actually want to add alternatives by requesting submissions, I can hit the request submissions button, and you can. We have a wizard that comes up that will help you walk through how to do this. And we would give a submission process a name, so let's just call it FY 2017 resource request. There's a spot for instructions, so if I wanted to tell the people who are going to be filling out the form what they're supposed to be doing, use this form for XYZ. We have options for the workflow itself. The default is that it goes through an approval workflow so that I can either approve or send it back for revision or archive it. We do have the option, though, of auto-approving all submissions. So if you wanted any idea that possibly comes in to automatically become an alternative, we can do that. There are potential pitfalls of that, of having duplicates or incomplete data, but if you do want to forego that workflow process, you can do that. The next step is to choose which fields that you want to include. So this is really, when you think about it, this is what are the form that I'm asking people to fill out, what are the elements of that form? And this will be made up of those fields that we just created. So we created all of those fields through the customization feature. If I wanted to create additional ones, I can do that through the link over here, or at the bottom, if I wanted to add more fields, I can do that on the fly. But on the right here is where I'm figuring out whether I want to include this or not when I'm asking individuals to fill this out. So maybe I don't want the square footage. The next step of the process would be, do I want this to be required? By default, they're not required except for name, but do I want to ensure that they have to fill out the name of the project manager and they can't submit it without it? So I'll just put that one as required. The next step is choosing participants. I only have myself in this one portfolio. If you had this populated, this would show you by participant group. So if I wanted to sort and only send this to the finance group, I could do that and pick and choose who this goes to, and not everybody would have the option. Again, the default is that everybody it gets the option to submit. And lastly, I have the ability to review this before I send it out. The name, which are the fields that I'm using. You can see which ones are optional, which ones are required. You can also see that this is square footage one is one that I did not include, and then the list of participants would be there. If I wanted to preview what that form is going to look like, I can preview it here, and you can see this is what, when users get it, this is what it's going to look like, and that they can fill it out. One additional option here in the fields is that I can choose whether or not I want to allow users to attach documents or not. So you may want to let users attach and submit that part of the submission. I also can put custom instructions. So the instructions are going to come from the descriptions that I added. If I didn't add a description, there is no instructions, but if I wanted to have a custom instruction that is specific to your to this data call, you can override that and provide specific instructions. And then when I send it off, it will alert me that if people are going to get an email, they'll get a task in their homepage. I'm just going to cancel out of this. If I wanted to save this as a draft for later, I can do that. And you can see now that I have a new section in my left-hand panel for submissions. I didn't have that before because I wasn't using it, but this is where I would manage the submission request, and also when I start to get submissions in, this is where I would manage that. So I'm going to kind of change hats a little bit and say, if I sent this out, what would the participants of that campaign get? What would the experience be? So if I was one of the participants, I would see a task that looks something like this. It says, you've been invited to send ideas for this submission request to the sample portfolio. It said, I happen to have a lot of different tasks in here, but for some users, they might be the only thing that they have. And by clicking on it, they get the form that we just created. So you can see what's the name of this portfolio that we have, who's the author, and I can start to fill this out, and I can say, I have an idea. I want to do the data center migration. Here's my description and location in Dallas, Texas, and the categories show up as drop-down. So each of the fields will show up exactly how I customize them in my customized alternative. If I want to then submit it, I can add an optional message that goes with it. Please consider this. and then off it goes. I could create another one. I could view it. You'll see in my homepage that I have a submission section that will show me the submissions that I have and the status of that. So you can see this one was submitted. If I wanted to open it up, it's in read-only mode for me to look at what the history of this was. If I had drafts, those would also show up here. So now as an owner of the portfolio, and any owner would be able to go in here, I can now have my submission section, and I will see, here's my open submission request, and here's where I manage that, and you can see here's how many I have in my inbox. So as these ideas come in, it works just like an email inbox that I get to see new ones. I have a little pill that tells me how many ones I haven't read yet. This is where I would manage the overall submission request itself. If I wanted to edit it, add new fields, change it, I could turn it on and off from here. But this is also where I am going through and reviewing these. You can see this data center migration one that I just submitted. Now, as the portfolio owners, I can now go in here and take a look and say, is this something that we want to do? Is this something that we want to add as an alternative? And I can go through these and I can toggle through each of these projects. Here's another one that somebody submitted for new analysis software. The next one for Project Cobra Kai. I like that one. And so when we accept it, we can have an optional message. This looks great. And it gets sent back. It goes into our accepted workflow. The author would get the notification that says that their project is accepted. And I can go through and I can either return these for revision. If it's returned, the author would have a chance to resubmit it with some comments, and the whole comment stream would be maintained there. But now for each of these alternatives, and we can go through this, and this submission process can stay open as long as you want. It could stay open forever, and you can kind of have this be the workflow. But as we now have new projects, you can then see that we have a new Project Cobra Kai that is in our alternative list. So this is how you can manage, and we know that this is not a one-time, once-a-year type of event, that you have ongoing living, breathing portfolios, and this is now a way that you can manage this intake process within all the same software.
Very cool. Thanks, Sanjay. The thing we hear all the time, and the reason why I think we're most excited to be talking about the idea engine now, is that idea collection process can be so distributed, manual, complicated. We hear all the time that ideas that did not get funded or projects that didn't get funded this year all of a sudden are gone for next year or next period. Like, where did it go? If we didn't choose to do Project A this period, why did we not choose to do Project A next year, or at least consider it? And so having it all in one place, having your sort of source of record, your gold source of all options on the table for this portfolio is really a huge efficiency piece and completeness piece for so many people in your shoes. And so I'm excited to make that available to you now for sure. The final thing we want to cover today is the final set of features all around security and user management. One of the things that we focus a lot on here is security. We recognize that when you have project data that you are entering in somewhere else, it's not something we can take lightly. It's not a risk we take lightly. And so we treat security and user management and user identity security as a feature of every release. It's not a nice to have. It's not a forgot about. It's an important feature there that we focus on every release. And this release is no different. So I want to cover a few of the things that are brand new around security and around user identity management, just so you know they're there, and then we'll hop into some of the questions. Okay, so first, let's talk about enhanced security. We added a number of features under the internal heading and the heading for new around Decision Lens identity management. It's not a name you'll ever need to worry about, ever need to know, but it's an important feature set we've added here to make sure that your identity security, your password security, your user security is stronger than ever was before. And one of the guidelines we're using to do all of our user security changes and all of our application security changes is all about FedRAMP. If you know what FedRAMP is the federal government, DoD level application security, IT security, system security, facility security standards that have been put in place, and we're in the midst of getting our certification around that, and all of our features that we're adding are all added within FedRAMP. So our goal is to hit the highest level of IT and system security, facility security, and our new features, meet all of that. And then finally, we've added the ability to have a single identity across all the Decision Lens platforms. The application, the support site, Decision Lens University, Now you have access to one. You can log into all of them. You're secure across all of them, but it's all brand new with the spring release. Second big feature is all around user management and user application and user changes. As a portfolio owner, as a portfolio facilitator, you now have a much easier way to add users, create users for your analyses, for your different portfolio models. There's a new screen for user management, lots of new functions, and lots of easy access for user additions, user changes, user role changes. You can filter by different types of users, all different things you want to see that make your portfolio management process that much easier. So user changes, security changes, there's lots of them in the spring release, and we're proud to offer them to you. So with that, how can you learn more about the spring release? We covered a number of the biggest features here today, but there's plenty more. You can find out what all of those are on the new site for this release. If you go to decisionlens.com/what's new, you will find all the features that are there, all the details around it, all the product videos. You can see them in action. Links to our YouTube channel there, youtube.com/decisionlens, which hosts all of our product videos. So you can find them. And then finally, all of our on-demand courses and software on Decision Lens University have been updated to the latest features. And so you'll be able to learn there, find them as much as you need. So lots of more places for you to learn. Okay, so with that, let's answer some of the questions that you all have submitted via the WebEx here. So let me start reading through those real quick, and we'll get some of them answered here. So bear with me as we do this a little bit live. All right, let's answer this one first. Sanjay, I think we're talking about here about the idea engine area, alternative areas. Is there any way to know where an alternative came from? As in, was it manually entered, or did it come from a submission or idea campaign? And if so, who submitted it? How is that handled?
Yeah, so there is a way to know where the origination came from, and I'll go right back into the sample portfolio that we had. So that when a alternative is created from a campaign and from a submission that was approved, we'll go down to Project Cobra Kai here, you'll see a couple different things. One is that you'll have a link in those particular categories that has View Original Submission. If I click that, it will link you right back into the submission task to show you how it was originally submitted, and the data is included in there. It's important to note that this data will not change, although if you wanted to change the data from the alternative itself, you can update that, you change the name, any of those things. You'll also notice that we have a new category that is automatically created that tells us what was the name of the originating submission request. That is the name of the one that we called. If you have a rolling one, perhaps you have a Q1, then a Q2, Q3, you'd be able to filter and sort by those.
Cool. Thanks, Sanjay. We had a question, I think it's around metrics. The question was, how can I add a metric or a quantitative metric to my criteria as a criterion? So I refer to that, Sanjay, when I was telling the story around how, look, these things can be used back in your portfolio analysis. And good question, I mean, how do I add that as one of my criteria?
Yeah, so we added on our blank one, we added a few metric fields in here of square footage and those kinds of things. And if I have criteria and I go to that, and I haven't actually created any criteria yet, but you see that I have all these available metrics that I created. I have the individual one that was not time-based at square footage, and I have the jobs created by individual year. And if I think square footage is actually something that's important to me, I can drag this over and use it as one of my criteria, and all the data that was incorporated in the alternative is going to be the same data that's used to rate that.
Great. Thank you, Sanjay. Another question that we just got is, I'm reading through a couple of these here. Can I mark a task as complete? So I think, we didn't talk a lot about it, but there's a new section on the home page there around tasks, and tasks assigned to me. So simple one, can I mark a task as complete, or can I end seeing a task?
You can. So if you have tasks that you don't want to see or you're done with, it's not really marking it as complete in that you're not responding to the person who asked you to do this, but it's really for you to clean up your view, because you might want to go back. So we have I've been invited to submit alternative ideas. Maybe I say, you know what, I actually don't have anything I want to submit. I can, if I hover over here, you see this hide button. And if I hide it, you'll see it, we can show it again in the task-specific view. It's gone from the overview, so it cleans it up if there's something that's, I'm never going to submit anything, I don't want to see it. But then a week goes by, so you know what, I actually do have something. So it's not gone forever. If I go to my task-specific view, you can see I have hidden tasks that I can still go back and either unhide or respond to.
That's great. You know, I really do think that the task screen is all about making it easier for you and all the different people involved in your portfolio analysis. What should I be doing? What should I be working on? What's assigned to me? I think it's a really good new view, and that's some cool new functionality for it. I think we've got time for one more quick question. I think we're out of time here. It looks like it's about Idea Engine again. Is the creator of the submission campaign form the only one that can approve a submission? So it probably means, you know, who can approve those submissions into alternatives?
Yeah, that's a quick response. So any portfolio owner can approve and move things through the workflow. So individually, I can go in and I can see that I have 4 unread. If there were other owners of this portfolio, their unread number might be different than mine because they haven't had a chance to go in and look at it, but any of us could go in and move them through to approve or return for revision. It's not just the person who sent it out.
Cool, thanks. All right, well, look, everyone, that's the time we've got today. No time for more questions, but if you've got any more, feel free to email us, info@decisionlens.com, or email Sanjay or I, or email anyone else you know. We'll get your questions answered. We hope you are excited about some of the new features here in Decision Lens. We want to make sure you get it and understand it. Look for our next webcast next month. We've got some very cool things going on with our analytics group, and we appreciate you joining here again today. We'll be sending out this recording within a day, so to see it all again, please share it with anyone you know, and hopefully we'll see you again on the next webcast. Thanks so much.